got LinkedIn online and YouTube working on connecting. And I've got a message here that YouTube has been having some problems. So, okay, YouTube online. So we should be good. Hey, everybody, it's time for office hours. Ask me anything. So I hope that you guys are ready with some questions. I also have one question that was sent ahead of time ready to go. If you have some fresh questions, you're welcome to ask them in the chat rooms, or if you'd like to ask something anonymously, you can send it to deltacx.link/AMA for Ask Me Anything. And that will come to me via email, and you can stay anonymous. It looks like LinkedIn has not yet been notified that we are live, so I'm going to wait and see what's going on with that. So LinkedIn peeps don't know we are live. Sorry, everybody, just pausing for a moment to see what we can do about that. It says LinkedIn is online and live and flowing, but LinkedIn hasn't sent out notifications to let everybody know I'm live. Has YouTube? Let's see. YouTube has. This is why I keep telling everyone to please subscribe to YouTube. Our YouTube is deltacx.tv. YouTube is great at going live. It's got a really low lag, and it will notify you that I'm live, whereas LinkedIn seems to come and go. And I'm not seeing a notification on LinkedIn yet. So this is office hours. Ask me anything. So what I think I'll do is I will start with a question that I got ahead of time through the Ask Me Anything link, and I'll answer that because that person might have to watch it later anyway. And hopefully during this time, LinkedIn will notify people that we are live. Again, not sure why that notification isn't going out, but when I ask LinkedIn about LinkedIn Live, they like to act like, well, it's still kind of in beta and we're kind of figuring it out, and do you want to do it or not? And I guess I want to do it. So my streaming system says we're live on LinkedIn, but I don't think anybody necessarily got any notifications. So we'll just see how this goes. Hopefully some of you will tune in to YouTube and ask some questions there. So let's start with the question I got ahead of time because it's a great one and I'm going to have a pretty long answer. It's also a two-part question. So here's the question. Empathy seems to be the buzzword that gets thrown around and eventually lost its meaning to me, says the person who wrote me, and I don't know who this is. Here's the two-part question. Number one, how do you truly become empathic? And number two, what do you think of people and people's portfolio when they put empathy in their design process? Empathy in quotes. Great question to our unknown person. So let me answer this. And again, this might be a little bit long, but I want to go into some depth and answer people's questions. And of course, this is office hours. Ask me anything. If you have a question, please ask it in the LinkedIn or the YouTube chat rooms, or of course, you can send it in anonymously, and I will look for the anonymous questions coming in. So empathy seems to be a buzzword that gets thrown around and can lose its meaning. I completely agree. I complain about this all the time. I see empathy used to mean, well, I took someone's perspective. Well, that's not really empathy. At least I go by, the more original definitions of it. The definition has been morphing and losing its meaning. Some people use empathy like sympathy, like if you feel badly for someone, our users are struggling and customers are having problems. Gee, that sounds really bad. I feel bad for them. That's technically sympathy, but I hear that used as empathy. Also, if you hang around enough design thinking and design sprints, you'll hear empathy defined as guessing what the customer's problem is. If you can imagine what the customer's problems are, if you can make a customer journey map of what you think the customer is doing or what you hope they experience, well, then you've empathized. And I would disagree with that. That's not the definition of empathy. The best answer for this would be the podcast that we did on empathy, which was with Dr. Seth Finkel, who also also appeared in my Delta CX book on the exact same topic. We did an entire interview with Seth, who is a psychologist, on empathy. What is it? Can you create it in people? Can you get more of it? And things like that, which leads us right into the person's first question. How do you truly become empathic? It depends on what definition of the word you use. If you use the definition of the word that mostly means, well, I'm kind of seeing things through your eyes and I'm kind of guessing what you go through, well, then everyone's going to declare themselves empathic, and there's nothing you need to do. If we go by more traditional definitions of empathic, which normally means to feel something with someone else. Now, when we see a sad movie and something bad's happening to someone and we cry or we tear up, that's not necessarily empathy. That can be sympathy. If you really research the definition of empathy, it means seeing someone else's world through their eyes so much that you can feel what they're feeling. Now, for some people, that's a little bit too woo woo. That's like, okay, are you also into astrology and crystals? But for some of us, this is reality. This is something that we're able to do. It's a little weird for many people to imagine that other people can do, that someone can be so tuned into someone else or so connected to what someone's experience and perspectives are that we feel what they feel. So it is very rare. And how do you become more empathic? It's very hard. There are psychologists who believe that you can become more empathic. If you listen to the interview with Seth, he mostly believes that people can become more empathic, but sometimes in kind of spurts or bursts. That sometimes there are ways to make people more sensitive to what other people experience and maybe more sympathetic to it, and that can look like empathy. But sometimes that comes and goes. Sometimes those people then forget about caring about those people and they become insensitive again. So you can Google how to become empathic, and most of it's going to be garbage. It's going to say, just imagine things through someone else's eyes, or just try to put yourself in their shoes. And really, the reality is, if you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes, but you're still you, then that's not empathy. In order to have empathy, you would have to be in someone else's shoes and say, okay, I'm this person with their beliefs, with their problems. A great way to kind of practice what level of empathy you have is think about someone who wants something that you're morally opposed to. Say you're morally opposed to people getting welfare, or say you're morally opposed to people getting an abortion. And what you can do is say, okay, well, let's imagine that person who needs welfare. Let's imagine that person who wants abortion. Are you able to put yourself into their situation, see their world through their eyes, and see, okay, this is who I am. This is what my reality is. This is why I need or want welfare. This is what my life looks like. And then you walk away thinking, wow, you know what? That's a real struggle for that person. They really need that welfare. And if you have empathy, you would say, wow, I really could feel how difficult their life was, and I could feel the fear and sadness and emotions that they go through related to their poverty level or their financial situation. Wow. But that gets into what you're going to do about it. Now, I've got a podcast coming up on that, which I call my empathy knowledge action model. That we throw the word empathy around so much that we don't say, and what are you going to do about it? So, catch me on the April 2nd podcast, and I'll be talking about two of my Delta CX models. One is empathy knowledge action, and the other is behavior triggers. So, I think there's going to be kind of a further answer of that uh, in that podcast. So please check back for that. So, how do you truly become empathic? I think it's hard. Again, there are psychologists who say it can be increased, but I have found that to be incredibly, incredibly rare. Most people don't have good self awareness about how empathic they are or not. So, how are you going to grow or change or get better at something when you don't have kind of a self honesty of where you are now? So I'll leave that there for now and say follow up on the video with Dr. Seth Finkel. You can find it at deltacx.tv, which is our YouTube channel. Go into the live podcasts playlist and just kind of scroll back in time until you see the Empathy podcast with me and Seth. Now, there's a second part to this question, which was what do you think of people and their portfolios, so their sample or real work projects, when they put empathy in air quotes in their design process? Now, of course, this question kind of answers itself. You can tell that this person is not impressed when people say, oh, my design process has empathy, or step one, just have empathy. And I agree. When I see someone say, I do design thinking, my gut thought is, then you probably don't do UX. Because if you did user centered design, human centered design, if you really believed in that scientific side of it, probably the first words out of your mouth, or the first keywords you wouldn't be putting into your portfolio, would be design thinking. You'd use design thinking if either that's what you believe in or you're hoping to jump on the buzzword train. Um, so when people say that their design process includes empathy, my normal reaction is, okay, show me. Show me how you had empathy. How do you know you had empathy? How do you know it was not just critical thinking or intellectualizing? So I'm looking for people to show me that. And I think if I were to interview someone and if their portfolio had said, I really had empathy for the user, well, I would say that's a turnoff. I might not necessarily interview that person unless they show amazing process and I'm impressed. But if they made it through that, and I am interviewing them, if they did have around their portfolio, like, I had empathy for the user or something that sounded a little bit hollow, I would ask them to define that. Give me your definition of empathy. And how do you know you had empathy for the user? Or how did you show empathy for the user? Or here it says you created empathy for the user. How much empathy was there before? How did you know that? And how did you create more later? So I think those questions are very hard to answer. Just playing my own game right now, I can't even imagine how I would answer those questions. How do I know how much empathy I have for something? And if because I've never said, I mean, I'll say, gee, I have empathy. And with empathy, I can see, like I wrote about McDonald's making a huge product and marketing mistake in the 90s. And I think it's easy to laugh at what they were trying to do because it seems so misguided. But in the book, I say, I have empathy and I can see why McDonald's would do this. I can see why McDonald's would have thought this was a great idea. I can see why they would have spent all that money in trying to accomplish this. So I can say, I have empathy. And if someone said, tell me more about that empathy, I would hope that I could answer that. But when I see portfolios that give these kind of general statements that say, I had empathy for the user, or I showed empathy for the customer, or I did a design workshop that created empathy, I would say, how did you create empathy? Because just putting sticky notes on a wall, just putting words into a template, these things don't create empathy necessarily. They could even work against it. I am still not seeing LinkedIn letting people know that we're live. I hope YouTube did. Did you get a YouTube notification? Okay, so did I. All right, well, strange. So I only have one YouTube watcher and I assume it's you? It's not you. Okay, hi, one YouTube watcher. Um, It's not my boyfriend. That is pretty much the question that I got in the past. How do you truly become empathic? What do you think of people in their portfolio when they put empathy in the design process? And my thought is prove it. It's a word that we're throwing around way too much. It's lost its meaning. And I think if you're going to use that word, you're going to need to back it up with how you did that, because there's too much of this design thinking bull right now that says, step one, create empathy. And then it's, make a customer journey map, or unfortunately, in most cases, guess at a customer journey map. So that is not my thing. So that is that question answered. And let's see, how do I tell the system I read the question? Uh, let's see, newer, older, done. I answered these. So let's see. LinkedIn still hasn't let anybody know that I'm live, and our one YouTube watcher left. So sad. Sorry to see you go. So I'm a little surprised that LinkedIn hasn't let people know that I am live, and I'm not too sure what I can do about that right now. There seems no way for me to force that. I could try to stop this stream and try again, but this is a little bit strange right now. Let's check the dashboard again. Dashboard says live in both places. What if I stop streaming to LinkedIn and restart it? I don't know. I guess I will try stopping this stream and starting again and seeing if we can catch people on LinkedIn, because I'm not too sure why LinkedIn notifications aren't going out. I did have trouble sending messages before, and I do tend to think these things are connected. But at least for the person with the question, your question has been answered. I hope this was helpful. Please send in a follow-up if it was not helpful. And I'm going to end this stream and try to start a new one and see if LinkedIn will let people know I'm live. So thanks, everybody. Be right back.